Are you ready to become awesomer? Hello, everyone. My name is Umar Hamid. I'm your host on the No Limit Selling podcast, where industry leaders share their tips, strategy, and advice on how you can become better, stronger, faster. Just before we get started, I've got a question for you. Do you have a negative voice inside your head? We all do, right? I'm going to help you remove that voice in under 30 days guaranteed. Not only remove it, but transform it. So instead of the voice that sabotages you, there's one that propels you to much higher levels of performance and success. There's a link in the show notes. Click on it to find out more. All right, let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the No Limit Selling podcast. Today I have Eric Berman with me today. He's a leader of a team. He's in Long Island. I did a really bad accent there. Eric, welcome to the program.
Hey, what's going on? Thank you for having me. My name is Eric Berman with Compass Greater New York, here in Long Island, as people like to say it.
What's kind of interesting is just how different the world is today versus 2 years ago. 2 years ago and change at the beginning of the pandemic, there was like real estate was dead, and it looked like all of you guys are going to be unemployed, never to work again. And then just a couple of months into it, the market took off. As you know, from longtime veterans, 30, 40 years, they said it was the second best market they've ever seen. What do you think was what were your thoughts, especially when you lead a team, when it looked like, oh my God, we're effed. Like this is not going to turn around for a long time. And how did you keep the morale up? And then when it started accelerating, how do you get the team to kind of stay focused on what they needed to do when it became a super hot market?
So at that time, I was still a solo agent. And, it was basically all about just staying focused, because I've gone through enough tumultuous times in my life that I said, oh, here we go again. You can't let yourself get distracted by the things that you can't control. And to be honest, I spent a lot of my time reading and just doing what we call sharpening the axe, just preparing for
very
battle.
much.
So I spent a ton of time doing that and watching webinars and speaking with realtors around the country and just kind of piggybacking off of things that they were doing that was working. And I actually was still selling homes in the pandemic when we were locked down. You just had to get creative. That's when, prior to the pandemic, I don't think I ever used Zoom, and, that had to change. You had to be able to do listing presentations and buyer consultations with people, because inevitably, regardless of market conditions, there's going to be people that need to buy, they need to sell, whether there's, death, divorce, things like that. There's people that just have to. So unfortunately, you have to be able to help those people, and being super communicative with my clients, past clients, and other agents around the country, we were able to help a few people, not tons, but like during that lockdown period, we were able to help some families out.
More in Baltimore. I was living in Baltimore back then. And after the first 2 months of panic, my realtor clients, they were busy all the time. It was like a ton of transactions, super hot market. And so those trials, right, when you come up against hardship, is if you stay focused on the basics, you get through it and you kind of go, hey, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was. So now that you've got a team and interest rates kind of fluctuating, how are you keeping the morale of the team up? How are you keeping them focused on the basics that they need to do?
Well, just like you said, the basics. So my whole thing, the way I look at this, I'm excited. When I saw the rumors of rates going up, when I saw them starting to go up, when I saw them hit 7.5, my reaction is great, bring it on, because this is what makes you strong. So with my team, we're just focusing on keeping our boots to the ground and just doing the basics, talking, having conversations with the people that we know that like us and trust us, with potential clients, outreach, just getting in front of people and having conversations, because at the end of the day, that's the name of the game in real estate. It's how many conversations can you have, because the conversations lead to appointments, and appointments lead to signed contracts. So it's really, what we're doing is not focusing on how bad the market is or how complicated and challenging it is, but just focusing on how can we speak to more people? How can we increase our conversations per day?
Absolutely. I think a lot of real estate in life is about the relationships we build and the conversations we have. It doesn't have to be a sales conversation. Just checking in. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? What's important in your life? And there's so little contact or meaningful contact in people's lives that a good phone call at the right time helps them get better, stronger, and helps you as a realtor. And then later on, when they're thinking about doing something or somebody mentions, hey, I've got to buy a house, and oh, Eric, call Eric. And do you find that to be true?
Absolutely. So I think about this all the time. There was a quote from Jim Rohn. I'm sure he quoted it from somebody else, but saying that if you want to make more money, be more valuable. So this business, while people think it's just about selling houses, I mean, yes, it is obviously. We are salespeople at the end of the day, but I find that it's more about figuring out what you can do to help other people, figuring out, what challenges are you having? What can I do, within, nothing crazy. We're not Superman, but we can try to figure out ways that we can help people's lives, help out their families, whether it be involving us getting business or not, because first off, it just feels good to help people. And then, like you said, without being too salesy and pushing every phone call to be like, hey, you're buying, you're selling, you're buying, you're selling. You're being of service. And then when the time comes and they want to buy something, they want to sell something, they're already thinking of you because you've been there all along as an asset.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that is one of the most painful things is if you happen to be a realtor or any other salesperson and you eventually get around to calling one of your clients to check in like 6 months or 8 months later than you should have. And they're like, oh my God, Eric, I just listed with another agent. I totally forgot. And it's not their fault. It's our fault for not staying in touch. So yeah, that's like a painful lesson, right? Have you
Oh
ever had one
man,
of those?
of course, of course. And you're like, why didn't you use me? Oh, I forgot. But that's why you have to have systems in place, systems for follow up, and you have to actually do it because, we speak to so many people, and if you're not organized with it, your brain is a scary place. We all have, no matter who we're talking about, we all have a lot going on inside here, and obviously you can't remember everything. I mean, I don't have a photographic memory, so I have to rely on systems using my CRM, keeping notes, reminding myself I'm constantly inside of my calendar, and you do whatever you have to do to be able to increase that mental capacity, even if it means using Alexa to set things in your calendar.
Absolutely. I mean, there's all these amazing tools out there now that allow us to be so much more productive and be on time. But like you said, you got to use them. If you don't use them, there's no point getting a process if you don't use it.
Yes.
And I think using processes are essential to success in any endeavor because you can diagnose where the problem might be or get somebody smarter to look at your process and go, I'm getting okay results. I wish you could get better. So, oh, well, no wonder you've got step 3 where it should be step 1. And it's like, oh, thanks. And they'll just turn it around on a dime and you'll get something that's incredibly valuable. So, Eric, as we're sitting here today, what I'd like to do is to talk about resiliency because, everybody is super fantastic at happy times. And when business is flowing, you don't even have to dial anybody. They're dialing you. But when things get tough, it's the ability to be resilient is important. What do you think are the essential elements? If you and I were designing a course, what would be the process to be resilient? What are some of the skills that people need to have?
Well, I think first and foremost, it comes down to your mindset. If you fall into the trap of having a victim mindset and making excuses for yourself constantly, it's going to be really, really difficult to pull yourself up when times are hard because it becomes so easy. And I've been there before. That's why I can definitely speak to this. Where you're like, oh, I didn't get this break. This always happens to me. Of course, it would go that way because it's me and I have the worst luck. As soon as you start turning that around and taking ownership for literally everything, somebody on your team quits, some deal falls apart. This is once you start making the transition to being like, what can I do to impact this? How can I do it better? This is on me, and put everything on your own shoulders. things start to change, because I was in a place where that was me. I was, a woe is me type of person. I went through a lot of stuff and, blamed a lot of other people. And it put me into like a really, really dark place that it took me literally years to get out of. And I was just straight up a loser and was just sucking at life. And when I really just was able to turn my mindset around, magical things happened.
Mm.
It really almost is like magic, because I think it was in the book The Richest Man in Babylon. They were saying that procrastination is the enemy of luck. So
Mm.
once you start taking ownership of your life and taking action towards everything, all of a sudden all these lucky things start happening to you. But it's not luck. It's that you're just going and leading with your own life.
Yeah, two things to add to that. Number one, I'm a firm believer in useful lies. Like if you take a look at science, there is no truth in science. It's like this is the best model we know now of how the universe works. And, 20 years later, there's somebody else going, oh, we got a better model. And it wasn't that the new model is the truth now. It's just a better truth. So as you said, taking responsibility when an agent leaves, you can blame them. You can blame a whole bunch of stuff and it disempowers you. Or you can say, okay, I had a role in that. So I'm going to accept responsibility for that, even if that happens to be a lie. Just by doing that, it allows you to go, you're in control and you can figure out what you need to do. But if you're blaming other people, other things, you give up your power and nothing's ever going to get fixed.
Yep, that's right.
There's a quote, I'm not sure who said it. It was success is all about luck. Ask any failure, which is exactly what you said, right?
That's amazing. That's awesome.
All right. So number one is basically, taking responsibility for what's going on is one of the steps for becoming resilient. What would be step two? Once you take that responsibility, what would be the next step, do you think?
Keeping your head down and limiting your exposure, if not blocking out altogether the outside noise. I don't, and this is a personal decision, I'm not really into watching the news because I feel like it's all doom and gloom and it's just distracting. It's also a lot of fabricated reality. I'm not going to say that all the news is fake or anything like that, but let's face it, everybody is selling something and they're selling advertisements. So they will often write things to sensationalize headlines to get you to click so that their advertisers can get paid. It's a business at the end of the day. So if you're worrying about, like, for example, being resilient in this current real estate market where the inventory is still low and rates are higher, if you spend all of your time worrying about the things that you can't control and paying attention to the news, instead of just really buckling down and, like we were saying before, going back to the basics, forging relationships with people, making phone calls, not scaling back on your marketing because you're scared of what may or may not happen. I feel like those are all things that can really either hold you back or push you forward.
Absolutely. So we've got, okay, take ownership, head down. Is there a third step?
To being resilient, you just don't stop. Because
Yeah.
it's like anything in life, like the old adage of digging for gold and the guy who's digging and digging and digging forever, and then he gives up, and then the next guy comes over and just gives a couple of picks and gets right to the
Finds it,
goal,
yeah.
because the first guy should have just kept going, but he didn't.
So here's my process for resiliency. Number one, you only need it when things are going wrong. And when things go wrong, the first question to ask is, the first thing to do is take a breath. Because the only thing you do control in the entire world is you. And the first thing you did when you entered this world was take a breath. So just literally stop for a moment and go, take a breath. Number two, when the bad thing happened, ask, what is the universe trying to teach me out of this event? Agent leaving or losing a deal, and you'll always get a message. And once you've got that message, I advise people to go, okay, what is the smallest step you can take in the right direction? Not the big one, not a complex plan, just take the smallest step. And by taking the smallest step, it gets you unstuck and it starts creating momentum. And once you've got the momentum, all that you said, hey, take responsibility, keep your head down, work really hard, keep on going. It all comes from that getting unstuck part. So that's basically what I'd add to your formula is that. And I think there's many ways to get it. And this is one that I've found really well. And dear listeners, if you come up with better ideas, send an email out to Eric and I, and we'll actually add it to our toolkit. So
I love
Eric, how
that.
many people on your real estate team?
It's just a small team. We are two agents underneath me. There's about to be a third one coming in, and admin and a virtual assistant. So pretty small team. So I'm just recently stepping into this role. So it's actually very exciting. Been working with my team on exactly what we're talking about now, about preparing for war, about getting ready, and just doing the things that need to be done to move us forward.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things, there's a good chance that some of the processes you have, Eric, are like not that great. Well, they might be brilliant. But I know one thing is in the next 6 months, they're going to get better because you're going to tweak whatever needs tweaking. And I think just having that small team, locking down the processes, really getting them to function really well, and then expanding the team is so much easier than you're halfway through the first two hires and all of a sudden you're getting more people in, more dynamics. So going back to what you started with, process is incredibly important.
Yeah, yeah. And right now, I'm more focused on having a ninja sales team as opposed to growing a big one because I want to establish a culture um, of caring and really taking the time necessary to really focus on helping my agents to sharpen their skills because so many business models they're just bring on every license as many as we can and then my bottom line will be great, but are the agents going to be providing for their family? Is it going to be the best thing for them? And the answer is maybe, but I want to be sure that everybody's families are provided for, that everybody's not just like receiving leads and just like, okay, I can close, but like learning how to fish. I don't want to just give them the fish. I'm teaching my agents how to hunt because I want them to be independent. And, at some point, I fully expect that everybody's going to leave me and they'll go on and do bigger, better things themselves. And I fully accept that. But I want to establish that culture that we're here to grow together.
Nice. I was working with the Michael Schiff home team in Baltimore, and they were at a crossroads, and we basically helped them define their culture. And one of the things that came out of it was we are hunters. So everybody at the retreat got an arrow, just as a reminder. And one of the things they ended up doing was every Thursday.
Actually, I'm going to write that down. I love that.
Every Thursday they do, do their phone work together as a team. They call every day, but Thursdays they do it together. And this one particular Thursday, they decided, okay, there's 10 agents, and we're all going to have 100 conversations today. So not 100 dials, 100 conversations. It was a long freaking day, but they just, they're hunters. So that was just something they did that quarter. And on that particular day, the amount of business they generated from that day was just mind blowing because everybody was in the zone. They had breakfast, they had lunch, and they all walked away with a ton of leads and a ton of opportunities, and they brought them home. And I think whatever your team is, you need to define the culture. And the best way to think about it is this, if you remember back, Eric, to maybe elementary school, you may have done this science experiment where the teacher got a magnet, a little bar magnet, put it on the table, put a white sheet of paper on top of it, and sprinkled iron filings on top of it. And as soon as they hit the paper, they moved to the lines of flux of the magnet. So you could see the magnetic fields. And what that represents for you and I is this, is that the paper is your team, the bar magnet is the culture of the team, and the iron filings are the behaviors and the attitudes of the team members. And so it doesn't matter if you take one of the iron filings and move it to where you need to move it, because as soon as you let go, it slides back to where it was. To create change, you need to change the culture. And that comes at a level of beliefs. And when you do that, you get a team that's 100% committed to each other. They know exactly where they're going. They've got a defined war cry. And it just makes your job 100 times easier. And once you've got the systems to back that team up, then expanding the team when you're ready is super easy to do because people are knocking on your door saying, oh my God, I want to work for you because this is home. This is what I want, this kind of vibrant environment. So thoughts on that metaphor of iron filings and paper?
That is an incredible analogy. I really, really love that. That's very memorable.
Nice. So before we part company, Eric, two things. Number one, being an agent, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received that allowed you to be a better agent or a better team leader?
Well, I mean, in terms of leadership, just remembering that leaders eat last.
Yeah,
Obviously, taking that from the title of the book, but it's super important. You gotta be able to put your ego down and make sure that you're putting the team first. Because at the end of the day, if you are doing all that you can to look out for them, they're going to look out for you.
absolutely. And I think ultimately, when I help teams come together, is what we're looking for is, like, if you take a look at the U.S. military, the average soldier in the Army doesn't really care about the commander in chief or the general that's X number of ranks up, but they deeply care about the people in their platoon and will do heroic things, put their lives on the line for their teammates. And ultimately, when we build teams, what we want is people fully committing to each other, and you just happen to be the leader. And if you can get that, you get a team that transcends you, and they'll walk through fire to do amazing things. And that way, it also allows you to kind of be that servant leader. One of the books, if you've not read, have you read Good to Great?
No, I have not.
Add it to the list. And I think, because you're a reader, and I think that's going to help fill in some of the gaps. So here's the final question, Eric.
Shoot.
What is one mind hack that you'd like to share with our listeners and viewers that would allow them to be more productive, sexier, taller, have better hair, or whatever that thing is for you? What would you like to share?
You said a mind hack?
Yeah, like a little technique you use to just be more effective.
I don't know about a mind hack, but I would just say like really, really digging into your schedule and your calendar, time blocking things out. It sounds so simple, but just making time for the events, not only professional but personal, just having it up in visual and seeing it. I think that that's one of the most impactful things in my career. It's just so basic, and I wish I had a cooler answer for you. And I'm sure I could
No,
think of
I
other
mean,
things, but like I think if there was like a new agent listening to this, so many people just go fly by the seat of their pants, and having everything like literally like when you go to the gym, when you're making phone calls, when you're going to have lunch, when you're going to, see your father for lunch or something like that. Like I think it's very
absolutely.
important.
It's something that most people don't do, and that's where they get into trouble. So thank you for reminding us all to do that, because it's always at the end of the day the basics that count. Like relying on, I got this fancy new thing that's going to save my career, or it's like, no, just do the basics and you're going to be fine. So Eric, thank you so much for being on the show. Really enjoyed the conversation, and
Me
I'm looking
too.
forward to our next.
All right. Thank you so much. This was amazing.
If you enjoyed this episode, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. And if you're looking for more tools, go to my website at nolimitselling.com. I've got a free mind training course there that's going to teach you some insights from the world of neuro-linguistic programming, and that is the fastest way to get better results.